You can't win if you keep moving fast in the wrong direction, yet you can't win if you move too slow either. The truth is, speed is the hidden ingredient behind every major success story you've ever seen. The top entrepreneurs in the world are moving at a pace that feels almost impossible to the average person. They get more done in a single week than most people achieve in an entire year. And what separates them from everyone else isn't luck or background or even talent, it's speed. The speed with which they act, decide, and adapt is their advantage. They move fast, they stay bold, and they innovate without hesitation. Speed of innovation is what matters. Look at Amazon, a company with over 1.5 million employees, and yet it's still one of the fastest moving organizations on the planet. That's not luck, that's culture. And that's what I want you to understand today. The culture of speed and the secret ingredient that allows certain people to move with precision and confidence while others stay trapped in hesitation and self-doubt. You see, most people are plagued by self-doubt. They want everything to be perfect before they move. They think about what could go wrong. They analyze, they hesitate, they wait for the stars to align. Meanwhile, the top 1% of entrepreneurs are already in motion. They've made decisions, executed on ideas, and achieved results before the average person even decides to begin. That's the difference. The gap between those who move and those who think too long is measured in years of progress. By the time you're asking if it's the right time, they've already turned their idea into a $1 million company. That's what speed does. It compounds results. But the big question is, how do these people move so fast? What do they have that gives them this ability to operate at such speed without constantly second-guessing themselves? The answer is confidence. Confidence is the key ingredient that unlocks speed. When you look at someone who moves fast and gets things done, what you're really seeing underneath is confidence. The confidence to act, to decide, to execute, and to keep going. Confidence is what removes hesitation. Confidence is what lets you take bold action without needing someone else's approval. And confidence, my friend, isn't just a feeling. It's a science. It's something that can be measured, built, and developed over time. Let me tell you a story that perfectly illustrates this. I was speaking at an event in Romania where Stephen Bartlett was also one of the speakers. Now, if you've ever seen how this man moves, you'll understand what high performance looks like. He landed in Romania at 10 in the morning. By 11, he had checked into his hotel and was already in the gym doing his workout. By early afternoon, he had arrived at the venue, not just to prepare for his talk, but to lead an innovative team meeting with a dozen of his senior staff. At 3 in the afternoon, he walked onto the stage and delivered an incredible presentation. Most people would have called it a day after that, not Stephen. He went backstage, prepared for another audience, and then delivered yet another presentation to over 500 people in an online session. And when most people would have been done for the day, I found him later in the airport lounge working on a pitch deck for his next big project. We ended up sitting on the same flight, and there he was again, reviewing product prototypes, strategizing ideas, and planning launches for the year ahead. That's speed, that's efficiency, that's execution without hesitation. He's not just moving fast, he's moving confidently fast. That's the difference. You see, in my first year in business when I was 21 years old, I didn't wait for things to be perfect either. I booked ads, I booked venues, I filled those venues, I made sales, I did $1.3 million in revenue within my first 12 months. Meanwhile, people twice my age were still doubting themselves, still talking about ideas, still stuck in fear. By the time they figured out whether to start or not, I had already built the thing, launched it, and made it work. That's what confidence does. It compresses time. It makes you faster because you trust yourself enough to move. Now, here's where the equation becomes clear. Confidence equals speed. The faster you move, the more confidence you seem to have. But what actually builds that confidence? What makes you sure enough to take bold action? The definition of confidence is simple. It's the ability to know what will happen next. Think about an athlete. A basketball player doesn't hesitate when he throws the ball because he knows what will happen when it leaves his hands. A Formula One driver doesn't flinch at 300 miles per hour because he can predict the car's response. Confidence is the ability to predict the next outcome. The more accurate your predictions, the more confident you become. But where does that ability come from? It comes from data. Confidence is built through data. The information you gather through experience, repetition, and measurement. Every time you do something, you collect a data point. The more data points you have, the better your prediction becomes. That's what confidence really is. It's your brain saying, I've seen this enough times to know what comes next. And this is where most people fail. They don't lack talent or intelligence. They lack data. They haven't done something enough times to feel confident doing it. They mistake lack of practice for lack of ability, and so they stay stuck. That's why the most successful entrepreneurs are also the fastest. They don't waste time overthinking. They just collect data faster than everyone else. They test, they fail, they adjust, they learn, and they keep moving. That's why Amazon is fast even with 1 million+ people, because they've built systems to gather data at lightning speed. So, if you ever wonder why you feel hesitant, unsure, or afraid to act, it's not that you're weak or incapable. You just don't have enough data yet. You haven't done it enough times to predict what happens next. You're not underqualified, you're underexperienced in that specific action, and that can change fast. The first step is to stop overthinking and start collecting data, because when you gather enough data, your confidence grows. And when your confidence grows, your speed multiplies. And when speed multiplies, you begin to win. Confidence, then, is not some mysterious force reserved for a chosen few. It's built through something measurable: data. When you collect data, you begin to see patterns. You begin to recognize outcomes. You begin to predict what comes next, and that prediction is the foundation of confidence. There's a concept called a confidence interval. It's what scientists and analysts use to measure predictability. It means that when you have enough data, you can start to estimate with accuracy how likely certain results will be. The more data you gather, the higher your confidence becomes. So let's break this down the way an entrepreneur would understand it. Imagine you do something 30 times. 30 sales calls, 30 public speeches, 30 videos. When you reach that number, you have enough information to create your first level of confidence. Out of those 30 tries, you begin to see patterns. You'll know roughly what works, what doesn't, how people respond, what to expect, and where your strengths lie. You now have what we call your first confidence interval. Statistically, about 2/3 of all the data you've collected fits inside this range. That means you can now predict outcomes with about 65% accuracy. You've seen enough to know what's likely to happen. That's your first layer of confidence. Now let's imagine you scale that number up. Instead of 30, you've done it 150 times. Now you've collected enough information to create your second confidence interval. This time, you're not 65% sure, you're 95% sure. You've almost eliminated uncertainty. You can predict what will happen next with near complete confidence. This is what separates those who move fast from those who hesitate. When you've done something 150 times, it stops being scary. It stops being unknown. It becomes predictable. And predictability breeds confidence, which in turn breeds speed. Let's put this into a real business scenario. Say you've just started selling a product. You've held 30 one-to-one sales meetings, and in those 30 meetings, you've made 3 sales. That means your conversion rate is roughly 10%. Based on that data, you can now predict with around 65% confidence that if you were to hold 300 sales meetings, you'd close about 30 deals. It won't be exact. Maybe 27, maybe 33, but you'd be close. Now, if you extend that to 150 sales meetings and you get 15 sales, your confidence increases dramatically. You can now predict with 95% certainty that if you held 1,500 sales meetings, you'd make roughly 150 sales. See how that works? You didn't get more talented, you just gathered more data. The data gave you confidence. That's why experience is so powerful. It's not magic, it's mathematics. Every repetition is a data point. The more data points you collect, the more certain you become about your future actions. And that certainty allows you to move fast. Most people wait for confidence before they act, but that's the trap. They think confidence comes first. No, confidence comes after. It's a result of doing, not a prerequisite for doing. You have to act first. You have to collect your 30 tries, your 150 tests. That's when you become confident. So the question becomes, how do you apply this to your life or your business right now? The answer lies in the 2 tests, the 30 test and the 150 test. These are the 2 experiments that every serious entrepreneur or performer should conduct constantly. The 30 test gives you your initial understanding, your 65% level of confidence. The 150 test gives you your mastery, your 95% level of confidence. If you post 30 pieces of content online, you'll have a sense of what resonates. If you post 150, you'll know exactly what works and how to repeat it. If you run 30 ads, you'll begin to see which messages convert. If you run 150, you'll know how to scale your business. If you hold 30 team meetings, you'll start to understand how your team responds. If you've held 150, you'll know precisely how to lead them. The more you do, the more you know. The more you know, the faster you go. That's why people who move slowly are often not lazy. They're simply uncertain. They don't have enough data. They haven't done enough repetitions to feel confident predicting what comes next. If you've never done something before, your brain has no reference point. That's why you feel afraid. But the more you do it, the less afraid you become. And the more confident you are, the faster you'll move. It's a self-reinforcing loop. Confidence fuels speed. Speed creates more data. More data fuels more confidence. That's the speed equation. Think about it in real-life terms. If you've never spoken on stage before, you're terrified of the unknown. You're thinking, what if I mess up? What if people don't like me? But if you've done 30 speeches, you already know what happens when you get on stage. You've experienced the nerves, the applause, the mistakes, the recoveries. You can predict the rhythm. You feel grounded. Now you're 65% confident. Do it 150 times and suddenly you're almost unshakable. You've built a 95% certainty about what happens every time you step onto that stage. You're not guessing anymore. You're executing. It's the same with being on camera. The first few videos feel awkward. You're overthinking your words, your tone, your expressions, but by the time you've done 30, something changes. You start to feel at ease. You know what angles work. You know how your voice sounds. By 150, you've mastered it. That's why creators who have posted hundreds of videos move so fast. They're not hesitating anymore. They already know what happens next. This applies to every area of life. If you've never hired someone before, you'll hesitate. But after interviewing 30 candidates, you'll begin to see patterns. After interviewing 150, you'll know within minutes whether someone is the right fit. If you've never run ads before, you'll be unsure what to expect. But after 30 clicks, you'll have a small sense of the outcome. After 150 clicks, you'll understand conversion behavior deeply. That's how you grow. You grow through repetition. You build certainty through exposure. When you understand this, you stop waiting for confidence. You stop saying, I don't feel ready. You realize that the reason you don't feel ready is simply because you haven't collected enough data yet. So instead of letting the feeling of fear paralyze you, you use it as a signal. I need more data. You go out, you test, you try, you measure, and you move. Because once you've done it 30 times, you'll feel different. Once you've done it 150 times, you'll be transformed. This is why the most successful people in the world are not the ones who got it perfect the first time. They're the ones who collected data faster than everyone else. They took action, they failed fast, they learned, they adapted, and they tried again. That's why they move fast. It's not recklessness, it's data-driven speed. When you understand what's likely to happen next, you don't hesitate, you act decisively. And that right there is what gives top performers their edge. Now think about this carefully. Confidence is not a feeling, it's a reflection of how much data you have. When people say they don't feel confident, what they are really saying is they don't yet have enough information to predict what happens next. That's it. It's not about whether you're good enough or smart enough. It's simply that your mind hasn't collected enough examples to make an accurate prediction. Once you've gathered those examples through repetition, the feeling of confidence automatically follows. So rather than focusing on whether you feel confident, focus on collecting the data that builds confidence. The feeling will come later, naturally, as a result of experience. This changes everything about how you approach growth. Instead of saying, I'm scared to do this, you begin to say, I just don't have enough data yet. That statement is empowering because it means you can fix it. You can decide to go out and gather 30 data points to build your 65% confidence interval. Then you can go further and collect 150 data points to build your 95% confidence interval. And once you do, you'll stop being held hostage by fear or hesitation. You'll stop doubting yourself because you'll know how things turn out most of the time. So, what does this look like in real life? Let's take the example of public speaking again. If you don't feel confident getting on stage, it's not because you lack courage, it's because you lack experience. You don't yet know what happens when you step into that spotlight, but if you commit to doing 30 speeches, you'll start to notice a transformation. You'll understand the timing, the flow, the audience's reactions, the energy in the room. You'll start predicting outcomes. You'll be able to say, when I tell this story, people respond. When I use this tone, they listen. By the time you've done 150 speeches, the stage will feel like home. You'll walk up there with confidence, not because you told yourself to feel brave, but because you've collected the data that proves what will happen. The same principle applies to business. If you're nervous about launching a product or running ads, remember, you don't need to be confident to start. You need to start to become confident. Run 30 ads. Track what happens. Gather 30 pieces of feedback. Watch how people respond. That's your 65% confidence interval. then do it 150 times. Refine your targeting, adjust your messaging, learn from the patterns. Suddenly, your 95% confidence interval kicks in. Now you know with almost complete certainty what will happen next time you run an ad. You're no longer guessing, you're predicting, and that's where confidence lives. You can apply this to anything: sales, leadership, content creation, relationships. Confidence is simply the byproduct of repetition and measurement. When you've done something enough times, you remove the mystery. You know the likely outcomes, and that makes you decisive. People who hesitate haven't done enough reps. People who act quickly have done their reps, studied the results, and internalized what happens next. They aren't lucky, they're informed. That's why it's so important to suspend your feelings until you have enough data. Don't make emotional judgments about yourself too early. Most people quit after 1 or 2 tries because they feel like it isn't working. But those feelings are lying to you. They're based on insufficient data. You haven't seen enough results to know what's truly going on. You can't draw a conclusion from 1 or 2 attempts. You need 30 to see a pattern, 150 to see the truth. So stop judging yourself on try number 5. Keep going until you've gathered enough evidence. There's a reason we say practice makes perfect. It's not poetic, it's mathematical. Every repetition adds another data point. Each data point increases predictability, and predictability is the essence of confidence. That's why professionals make things look effortless. It's not that they were born confident, it's that they've practiced enough to predict outcomes accurately. The athlete who performs flawlessly under pressure, the speaker who commands the stage, the CEO who makes quick decisions, they've all built a library of data through experience. They know, based on thousands of repetitions, what's likely to happen. That's why they move so fast. They're not guessing anymore. When you see someone like Stephen Bartlett operating at high speed, you're witnessing the power of data-backed confidence. He's done so many podcasts, business deals, product launches, and speeches that he knows how things unfold. He can move from a gym session to a business meeting to a stage presentation to an investor pitch all in one day because he's repeated each of those tasks enough times to predict outcomes with almost total certainty. He doesn't waste time doubting himself because his brain already knows the probabilities. That's why he seems unstoppable. It's not superhuman. It's the science of experience. And that's the truth behind every high performer you admire. They've done the thing enough times to remove uncertainty. They've failed enough times to understand where mistakes happen. They've succeeded enough times to know what works. They've collected enough data to build massive confidence intervals. And because of that, they can move at lightning speed without getting paralyzed by fear. Meanwhile, the average person is still on their first or second try, feeling unsure, assuming confidence is something they need to feel before acting. But that's backwards. You can't feel confident before you start. You have to start before you feel confident. So when you catch yourself saying, "I don't feel ready," remind yourself, readiness isn't a feeling. It's a byproduct of doing something enough times. You're not supposed to feel confident before you begin. You're supposed to begin so you can earn the confidence that comes afterward. Every action you take is a piece of data. Every repetition is a brick in your foundation of certainty. That's how you build speed, that's how you build confidence, and that's how you win. The difference between those who talk about success and those who achieve it lies right here. One group waits for the perfect plan. The other group moves, collects data, refines, and grows. One group debates ideas endlessly. The other group tests those ideas 30 times, learns what works, and builds unstoppable confidence. You can't think your way into confidence. You have to act your way into it. So stop being afraid to act. Start collecting data. Do it 30 times, then 150 times. Track your results, learn from your mistakes, and refine your approach. Don't let feelings of fear or doubt define your pace. Let data define it. Because the moment you have enough data, hesitation dies. And when hesitation dies, speed takes over. That's the equation of progress. That's how the greats move fast, without chaos, without fear, without regret. They've earned their speed through confidence, and they've earned their confidence through data.